Okay, so here's the thing. The Mandela Effect isn't just people forget stuff. It got its name because thousands swore Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, funerals on TV, eulogies, a national mourning vibe they could describe in detail. He didn't. He became president. That's not a typo. That's a shared false memory with cinematic texture. Most people think memory is like a hard drive. You save a file, you play it back. But here's what actually happens. Memory is reconstructive. Each time you recall, you rebuild the scene from pieces, sensory bits, cultural cues, what should have been there. That works great most days, but when enough people share the same priors, the same stories, the same archetypes, the same should, you get collective misremembering. Personal errors are easy to shrug off. You misplace your keys, you misremember a date, but collective misremembering, where thousands or millions report the same wrong detail, is different. It doesn't just ding your ego, it challenges shared reality, because society runs on consensus memory, courts weigh eyewitnesses, culture transmits by quotes, logos, and maps. If the crowd can be confidently wrong together, the ground under our social contracts feels less solid. Let's get specific. There's a taxonomy of hot zones where these memory glitches love to live. Logos and brand names, tiny graphic choices you saw 1,000 times, now suddenly wrong. Famous lines from movies, the sentence you've quoted for decades that never appears on the script page. Maps and geography, the shapes that anchored your school years now look off by a few degrees. Timelines, when something happened, in what order, who said what first. These are the pressure points because they mix constant exposure with low-stakes detail, perfect for your brain to optimize and then defend. Microstory: a friend of mine once bet lunch that Forrest Gump says, "Life is like a box of chocolates." Full confidence, he even did the accent. We pulled up the scene, life was like a box of chocolates. He blinked, then he argued context, then he laughed it off, but the unease hung in the air. He didn't just get a word wrong, he felt the alternate line was truer to the character, the cadence, the cultural echo. That's the storyteller brain at work. Why does this matter? Because if memory is a storyteller, we need to ask what stories it's inventing and why those stories converge. Your brain is Bayesian by default. It fills gaps with what's probable under your current model of the world. It trades exactness for coherence. If a Bear family from your childhood felt warm and familiar, maybe their last name should end with Stein. If Darth Vader is addressing Luke, maybe he should say his name in the line. If a cornucopia belongs with fruit, your visual system may tuck one into the logo that never had it. Now the stakes: shared memory underpins identity. Generations bond over quotes and brands. A geography class shapes your internal map of the world. When those anchors shift or seem to, people don't just feel wronged, they feel unmoored. And that emotional jolt is fuel. It hardens certainty, it spreads stories faster, it makes corrections feel like gaslighting. Most people think more facts fix it, but confidence doesn't track accuracy. It tracks fluency, how easily the story slips into place. Here's where it gets interesting. The Mandela Effect thrives where confidence and repetition intersect. The more times you've said the wrong line, the smoother it feels. The smoother it feels, the truer it feels. And once a community crystallizes around a specific wrong detail, specificity becomes armor. List of exact scenes, colors, props, these don't guarantee truth. They just make the story richer, and richer stories are stickier. You might be thinking, fine, memory's messy. But why do the same errors pop up across people who never met? Culture synchronizes priors. We see the same posters, movie trailers, classroom maps, cereal boxes, meme remixes. Our brains compress patterns to save space. Then under recall, they decompress, and sometimes they add a piece that should be there. It's not laziness, it's engineering. And that engineering is optimized for usefulness, not perfect recall. There's another layer: social proof. When you meet a confident storyteller describing the exact scene you remember, your brain smooths the joint. Source monitoring, keeping track of where you learned a detail, breaks down. Was it the movie, the parody, the meme, a friend's retelling? After enough cycles, the origin tag is gone, but the detail remains. That's how jokes become quotes and quotes become facts. So does normal psychology explain everything? It explains a lot. Reconstruction, schema filling, source confusion, fluency, social contagion. This cocktail can produce vivid, shared false memories. But for many people, it still feels wrong. Because their memory isn't just a list of facts, it's a lived texture, a personal movie. When the world tells you your movie is edited differently, it feels like reality is the part that glitched. Now, if memory is a storyteller, what stories is it inventing next? Let's test that by walking into the canon cases, the ones you can't unsee once you see them. The canon cases you can't unsee. Let's hit the cases that break brains. First, the Berenstain Bears. Most people think it's spelled with Stein. Confidently, they'll even insist they owned a book with that spelling, but every verifiable primary source, publisher catalogs, Library of Congress records, author interviews, first editions, spells it Berenstain. Stan and Jan Berenstain signed their own names that way. Early covers, same. What actually happens is phonetic expectation and orthographic regularity. Stein is common in surnames you've seen. Stain looks wrong, so memory silently autocorrects and then defends the correction. Now the Star Wars line. The cultural echo says, "Luke, I am your father." You've heard it in parodies, you've said it out loud, it feels baked in. But the line on the script and in the audio is "No, I am your father." Vader is answering a specific claim, so why does Luke sneak in isolation? Quotes pulled from context often get a name added for clarity in conversation. Then the meme runs faster than the correction because it's more portable. Say it to anyone and they know the reference. Next up, the Monopoly man's monocle. You can see it in your head, right? Top hat, mustache, monocle, except he never had one in official artwork. What you're doing is blending archetypes, a wealthy banker stereotype plus Mr. Peanut's monocle plus a century of cartoon shorthand for rich. The monocle is a visual cliché glued on by schema. Once you've seen it, your mind backfills it on every box, even though the character's eyes are bare. Pikachu's tail is another sticky one. People swear the tip is black. It's not. Pikachu's tail is yellow with a brown base. The confusion probably comes from early sprites with limited palettes, fan art, and other Pokémon with black accents. Memory compresses electric mouse with bold colors and decompresses with a black-tipped silhouette that reads cleaner at a glance. The more you doodled it in notebooks, the more that simplification set. Fruit of the Loom might be the most emotionally charged, the cornucopia. Many remember the fruit spilling out of a horn. The horn feels inevitable, fruit belongs in a cornucopia, right? But the trademark filings, brand-style guides, and courtroom exhibits show no horn. It's always been fruit grouped together. Again, we see schema pressure. The Thanksgiving image of abundance overlays a brand mark until the overlay feels like the original. People even remember the woven texture of the horn, details your brain invents to justify the belief. So what's the pattern tying these together? Confidence plus specificity. The wrong detail isn't vague, it's crisp. You can draw the monocle, you can spell Stein. You can hear Luke in the breath. Specificity creates a false sense of fidelity. Your brain equates vividness with truth because in real life, the most vivid experiences tend to be the most important. But in recall, vividness can be manufactured by repetition, parody, and cultural remixing. Here's a quick micro test you can run right now. Without looking, visualize the Kit Kat logo. Is there a hyphen? Many place one there automatically because the rhythm of Kit Kat suggests separation. The printed word is Kit Kat, no hyphen. That small gap between expectation and reality is where these effects live, the mind's version of autocorrect optimized for fluency. Another reason these cases persist is that official records feel abstract compared to your lived experience. A PDF of a trademark is sterile. The box on your childhood counter is warm. When those conflict, comfort wins until you sit with the evidence long enough for the comfort to migrate. That migration is slow because social reinforcement keeps the old memory alive. Friends, memes, misquotes in shows, low-effort edits on thumbnails that prove the thing you already think. But here's where it gets interesting. The more the internet repeats the false version, the more it creates plausible sources to confirm the memory. Fan art with a black-tipped tail, costume accessories that include a monocle, bootleg shirts with Stein. These artifacts feel like evidence even when they're downstream of the error. Your brain loses track of which came first, the memory or the derivative that mirrors your memory. So are these just gotcha trivia? No, they're diagnostic. They show us the levers that move collective memory, archetype pressure, conversational clarity, visual shorthand, and repetition. They also show why corrections rarely cure the feeling. You can accept the receipts and still feel the alternate version tug at you for years. And once you accept that single items can glitch this hard, your next question writes itself. If logos and lines can slip, could entire movies? Millions swear they rented a comedy called Shazaam starring Sinbad as a genie with specific scenes they can describe. That's not a misread hyphen, that's a whole narrative. Let's walk into the strangest case of all. The Sinbad Shazaam phenomenon. Here's where the story stops being a neat trivia trick and turns into a full-blown mystery. Millions swear they watched a 90s family comedy where Sinbad played a wisecracking genie, Shazaam helping kids find a lost treasure and fix a broken home. They remember VHS boxes, rental store shelves, even specific scenes, a living room wish gone wrong, pink smoke, a finale with a family hugging it out as credits rolled. And yet, no such movie exists. So what are the obvious confounds? First, Kazam Shaquille O'Neal's 1996 Genie movie. That's real. Big, colorful hip-hop soundtrack, a giant genie in a boombox. If you were a kid then, those images were everywhere. Second, Sinbad's own genie-adjacent outfit during a 90s TV marathon where he hosted as a piratish character with billowy pants and a turban vibe. That clip circulated, and for a brain primed by Kazam, it became the missing puzzle piece. Sinbad equals genie equals Shazaam. But that doesn't fully cover the density of memory people report. You can read forum threads years apart with users who don't know each other describing the same beats. A scene with a kid wishing for his crush to like him, a chaotic sequence in a department store that pink or purple genie smoke. Identical props get mentioned, an amulet, a cracked lamp, a cheesy mid-credits blooper reel. The specificity is uncanny. It's not just I think this existed. It's here's the scene order. Here's the cover art with a gold logo and Sinbad crossing his arms. Now memory blending explains a lot. The 90s VHS culture was a visual soup, rows of boxes with similar fonts, saturated colors, floating heads, and bold titles that all rhymed. 1,000 family comedies recycled the same poster tropes, kids looking up at a magical figure, sparkles, gradients, teal to purple backgrounds. Your brain compresses those patterns and stores them as the 90s kids movie look. Later, when you retrieve one fragment like Genie comedy, it decompresses a best guess package, poster, scenes, tone, stitched from real films and trailers you actually saw. It gets trickier when you consider the eyewitness density. People cite thrift store finds, torn clamshell cases, or a VHS they remember rewinding. The problem is physical-seeming memories aren't proof, they're a level of detail. Detail feels like evidence because in day-to-day life, the more detail you recall, the more likely you were actually there. But our brains can fabricate details if the narrative schema is strong enough. That means a single blockbuster template. Kid meets magical helper, hijinks, lesson, reconciliation, can seed 100 memories that rhyme. Then Sinbad did something clever. In response to the wave, he made a short meta-prank where he appears as a genie, intentionally riffing on 90s aesthetics, soft lighting, cheesy wardrobe, overacted reactions. It was a joke, a commentary, but for some it felt like a confession. They saw the clip, felt an emotional click, and said, there it is. The aftershock was predictable, confirmation for believers, fuel for skeptics, and a deeper muddling of what counts as evidence. So what signal could exist inside all this noise? Start with narrative templates. The 90s loved transformation comedies. A magical being arrives, grants wishes, chaos ensues, family bonds tight. Layer and cast conflation. Sinbad and Shaq were both towering cultural figures with single-word stage names, both comedians in family media spaces, both appearing on kid-friendly TV. Add poster aesthetics, a handful of Genie-themed TV episodes across different shows, and a fog of parody sketches. What you get is a latent composite so complete that it feels like a standalone film. There's also the role of early internet forums archiving partial truths. Someone posts a mock-up cover as a gag, someone else screenshots it, and years later the image reappears without the joke caption. Thumbnails on YouTube ride the algorithm with convincing fake VHS textures. Each artifact is downstream of the claim, not upstream, but if you encounter it first, it feels upstream. That reverses causality in your head. I remember it because I saw it, when in fact, I saw it because I remembered it. Now here's a micro story that captures the psychology. Last year, a guy DM'd me swearing he rented Shazaam at a strip mall video shop in '94. He described the carpet color, the bell on the door, the clerk's band tee. When I asked for the store name, he paused, couldn't recall. I said, describe the box spine. He said gold serif letters. I sent him 3 real spines from different 90s comedies, same gold serif. He laughed, then got quiet. The memory scaffolding was solid. The title hanging on that scaffolding was not. So is Shazaam proof of a cracked timeline? Or proof that our collective storytelling engine can synthesize a movie from cultural ingredients and then believe it? The honest answer. You can explain the phenomenon with known psychology, schema, source confusion, social reinforcement, and visual template compression without invoking parallel worlds. But don't shrug too fast. The reason Shazaam endures is that it's not a stray logo tweak. It's a coherent narrative memory with shared beats. That's rarer, and it's why people dig in. Everything changes when you see this as an algorithm of the mind, not random chaos. The algorithm prefers familiar arcs, archetypal costumes, and names that rhyme with what's in the neighborhood. Kazam, Shazaam, Sinbad, Shaq, Genie, Smoke, VHS Glow. It picks the most fluent combination and locks it. Once you understand that, group invention stops looking like collective delusion and starts looking like collective compression, lossy, confident, and unbelievably persuasive. Next, let's widen the lens. If our minds can fabricate a movie, what happens when the glitch spans continents, maps, countries, and the shapes that lined your classroom walls? Maps, brands, and geography shifts. Let's talk about the stuff that lived on your classroom walls and in your kitchen cabinets. This is where people say, no way, that's not where that country sits, with the same confidence they had about a monocle that never existed. Psychologically, these hit your spatial memory, parietal networks, and semantic memory temporal lobe stores at once, which turbocharges confidence even when detail is off. Start with the Southern Hemisphere whiplash. A lot of people swear New Zealand is northeast of Australia, tucked closer to the Coral Sea. But look at a globe, it's southeast, down and to the right, a long flight into colder water. Sri Lanka, too many remember it directly south of India like a pendant on a chain, not off to the southeast where it actually hangs. And the heavy hitter, South America, moved east. People remember it sitting more under North America, not jutting so far into the Atlantic. When they see the current map, it feels tilted. Why do maps trigger such strong Mandela claims? Authority and repetition. School maps were presented as truths on the wall, unchallenged, daily, testable. You traced coastlines, recited capitals, spun the globe. That repetition builds a muscle memory of shapes and relative positions. If your internal map was trained on a distorted image, you'll defend that distortion as reality because it's fluent. The moment a modern, accurate projection feels off, the mind doesn't blame the old chart, it blames reality. And those classroom maps weren't neutral. Off-model classroom charts, regional atlases, and projection choices can warp your intuition. The Mercator projection, plastered across decades of classrooms, stretches areas near the poles and compresses near the equator. It also visually centers Europe and North America for many editions, subtly anchoring your gaze. Then throw in publisher variants, some with cropped margins, some with stylized outlines, some with grid lines that invite mental snapping. Over time, your brain stores a stylized world that isn't wrong so much as optimized for teaching. And later, satellite-corrected shapes feel like the glitch. Now slide from maps to brands, same mechanism, different canvas. KitKat's hyphen has launched entire debates. Many people are sure there's a dash between Kit and Kat. The logo reads as one word. That hyphen lives in the rhythm of speech, and in 1,000 bootleg packages add mockups and fan edits. Febres is another. Lots of folks remember Febres, double E like breeze. The actual mark uses one E in the middle. Your phonetic system expects airflow to be spelled like airflow. The brand chose a tighter string. Your brain corrects it automatically, then files the correction as fact. Skechers without a T is a quiet assassin. Skechers looks right if you think of sketching shoes on a notebook in homeroom. The brand has always been Skechers. Memory glues the T because the root word in your head is a verb, not a name. Looney Tunes, not Tunes, plays the same tune. Tunes is the common slang for cartoons, and it feels obvious. But the original name riffs on musical shorts, tunes, so the mark says tunes. When people say they remember the other way, they're often recalling VHS cases, off-model licensee art, or fan graphics that used the more intuitive spelling. Let's hit the 51 or 52 states puzzle. You'd think everyone knows it's 50, period, end of story. Yet a surprising number of people, especially outside the US, but not only hold a lingering sense that there are 51 or 52. What's going on? Cognitive anchors. Washington, D.C. functions like a state in some conversations, and Puerto Rico appears constantly in news and ballots debates. Add in Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and other territories mentioned in civics class, and your category states and not quite states grows fuzzy. Under pressure, the brain grabs a rounder number and moves on. Back to geography feels. The moment you say South America is too far east, someone else says no, that's just the map projection. Both can be partly true in experience. If your teacher used a regional map of the Americas that framed the continents in a more vertical relationship, cropping the Atlantic bulge, you learned a relative placement. Later, when you see a full hemisphere projection that shows the bulge, it reads as drift. There's no continental teleportation, just a shift in framing that rewires perceived angles. Here's the pattern you're sensing. Repetition creates certainty. Certainty resists correction. Your brain rewards coherence. If you saw a thing 100 times on a wall chart, your certainty will outlast a dozen high-resolution images because the old version is embedded in a web of memories. The smell of dry erase markers, the color of the pushpins, the quiz you aced. Facts and feelings got braided together. But here's where it gets interesting. Off-model artifacts keep the alternate memory alive. A thrift store globe with outdated borders or a novelty poster that stylizes coastlines can act like evidence, even if it's simply old or decorative. The same thing happens with brand marks. A bootleg shirt, a third-party retailer's sloppy listing, a Halloween costume accessory. Once you've seen a wrong but plausible variant, it functions like a receipt for the version your mind prefers. Now you might be thinking, so it's all just sloppy maps and funky logos. Not quite. The mechanism is deeper, schema pressure plus exposure plus social reinforcement. Your internal world map and your pantry logo set are schemas, exposure cements them. Friends, memes, and confident posts reinforce them. That triad is powerful enough to beat a correction, unless you cultivate a habit of checking dated sources. So what's the mechanism under the hood? We're about to pull it apart. You're seeing a pattern, expectation shaping recall, but to really understand why it feels like reality itself slid a few inches to the right, we need the engine diagnostics. How memory rewrites itself, why fluent stories feel truer than accurate ones, and why corrections bounce off confident minds. Let's open that hood. How memory actually works, the boring truth that isn't. Here's